You care. That's not the problem. The problem is how heavy it has become. Somewhere along the way, caring turned into carrying. Caring became tension in the chest. Caring became weight in the shoulders. Caring became scanning for problems. Caring became bracing for impact. And most of us don't even notice when the shift happens. We just call it love. We call it responsibility. We call it leadership. We call it being the strong one. But there is a difference. Caring is clean. Caring is tight. Caring responds. Caring anticipates. Caring is available. Caring is braced. And when you've already seen through identity, when you're no longer trying to become the good one, the spiritual one, the strong one, this distinction becomes even more important. Because without ego armor, caring feels heavier than ever. Let's start with something honest. You cannot control the outcomes of the people you love. You cannot manage every ripple in your environment. You cannot prevent every mistake. You cannot pre-solve every future problem. But many of us try, especially if you're a parent, especially if you're a leader, especially if you're the stable one in your circle, especially if you grew up learning that love meant vigilance. Caring looks like monitoring moods, overthinking conversations, fixing problems before they're asked about, staying 2 steps ahead of conflict, taking responsibility for everyone's emotional state, absorbing tension in a room, planning for disasters that haven't happened. Feels noble, feels protective, feels mature, but it's exhausting. And here's the part most people don't want to admit. Caring is often about control. Not malicious control, protective control. An attempt to make sure nothing falls apart. An attempt to prevent pain. An attempt to secure stability. But life doesn't cooperate with that strategy. And the more you try to carry everything, the more tense your system becomes. Caring doesn't feel like that. Caring is responsive, not predictive. Caring shows up when something actually needs attention. Caring listens without immediately fixing. Caring supports without absorbing. Caring allows others to feel their own emotions. Caring doesn't panic at discomfort. Caring doesn't tighten at uncertainty. Caring is strong. Caring is anxious. There's a subtle addiction in carrying. It gives you a role. It gives you importance. It makes you the stabilizer, the fixer, the reliable one. But when you're no longer building identity, you don't need that role. You don't need to be the one holding everything together. You can simply participate. And participation includes letting other people carry their own weight. Let's bring this into real life. Your child struggles. You feel it immediately. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts planning solutions. You scan for what you missed. You replay conversations. You wonder if you failed somewhere. You start caring. But what if caring looked different? What if caring meant sitting next to them without solving? What if caring meant asking one clear question instead of 5? What if caring meant letting them navigate something uncomfortable without rescuing them from it? That doesn't mean indifference. It means trust. Trust that they are allowed to struggle. Trust that pain isn't always damage. Trust that growth isn't neat. Caring says, I must prevent this. Caring says, I'm here with you. That's a different nervous system. The same applies to relationships. Your partner is stressed. Your instinct might be to absorb it, to stabilize it, to correct it, to prevent it from escalating. But often what's needed is presence, not management. Caring tries to reduce tension immediately. Caring allows tension to move naturally. Caring takes ownership of emotions that aren't yours. Caring respects boundaries. Participation in love doesn't mean merging into one nervous system. It means standing steady in your own, without armor, without control, without withdrawal, just steady. Now let's bring this into work. If you're a leader, you've probably felt this. The team is struggling. Numbers dip, energy shifts, conflict surfaces, and you feel it. Immediately, caring kicks in. You overcorrect. You overexplain. You overfunction. You step in too early. You prevent natural growth. You micromanage in subtle ways. Not because you're insecure, because you care. But caring without clarity becomes control, and control breeds tension. What if leadership looked like clear expectations, direct communication, boundaries, and then trust? Trust that people can rise. Trust that mistakes teach. Trust that you don't have to hold everyone's emotional state. Participation in leadership is steadiness, not constant adjustment. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes carrying feels safer than caring, because if you carry everything, you feel less vulnerable. If you're the one managing the emotional temperature, you don't have to sit in uncertainty. If you're constantly scanning for problems, you don't have to sit in stillness. Carrying keeps you busy. Caring requires presence, and presence is exposed. You're not controlling the outcome. You're just here, open, responsive, steady. That's more mature, and it requires strength. There's also a biological layer here. When you carry, your nervous system is slightly activated, not in panic, but in vigilance, low-grade tension, low-grade scanning, low-grade readiness. It becomes normal, so normal that relaxation feels unfamiliar. Caring, on the other hand, allows regulation. You respond when needed, then you settle. You don't stay braced. You don't stay alert for impact. You don't stay contracted. This is especially important if you've been the strong one for a long time. If you've been the responsible one. If you've been the protector. Your body may not know how to stop carrying, even when nothing is happening. That's not spiritual. That's conditioning. And conditioning can soften. Here's a simple test. The next time someone you love is struggling, notice. Does your body tighten? Do you immediately move into problem solving? Do you feel responsible for their relief? If yes, pause, breathe once, and ask internally, is this mine to carry? Most of the time, it isn't. It's yours to care about, but not yours to carry. That one distinction can change your energy entirely. Participation without becoming means. You don't become the savior. You don't become the fixer. You don't become the emotional shock absorber. You participate in love. You participate in leadership. You participate in friendship. But you do not absorb the entire weight of the world around you. That's ego disguised as virtue. And once you see that, something relaxes. There's another side to this. When you stop carrying everything, you might feel guilt. You might feel like you're doing less. You might feel like you're slacking. You might feel like you're not being supportive enough. That discomfort is normal. It's withdrawal from a role that made you feel necessary. But here's what happens when you shift into clean caring. Your energy becomes clearer. Your responses become sharper. Your presence becomes calmer. You stop overreacting. You stop overextending. You stop resenting silently, because carrying eventually leads to resentment, even if you don't admit it, even if you think you're selfless, because at some point the weight feels unfair. Caring doesn't build resentment. Caring does. This season is about maturity. And maturity includes boundaries. It includes emotional clarity. It includes trusting others to handle their own life. Even when you love them deeply, especially when you love them deeply, participation means you stand steady, you show up, you respond when needed, you rest when it's not needed, you allow space, you don't collapse, you don't control, you don't withdraw, just steady. So here's the challenge for this week. Find one place where you've been carrying instead of caring. One relationship, one responsibility, one area, and experiment. When tension rises, don't immediately solve. Don't immediately absorb. Stay present. Ask what's actually required, not what your anxiety suggests. Notice the difference. Notice how your body feels. Notice how your tone shifts. Notice how others respond when you're steady instead of braced. This isn't about doing less. It's about doing cleanly. You can love without tightening. You can lead without absorbing. You can support without rescuing. You can care deeply without carrying everything. That's strength, not loud strength, not performative strength. Quiet steadiness, soft heart, strong spine, And that's the direction we're moving this season. Next episode, we'll look at something just as subtle: conflict without identity. Because if you can care without carrying, you can also disagree without defending who you are. And that changes everything. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who carries more than they admit. And if you're ready to participate in love without absorbing the world, stay here. Season 10 continues.